Assalamu alaikum. May peace be with you all. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I wish you a warm and pleasant afternoon. It's my distinct pleasure and honor to host today's third plenary session of the conference. My name is Saika Heather. I am a research scholar in the Department of English, MANUU. I welcome you all to this international conference on translating cultures, exploring the intersections of language and literature. I stand before you today with great pleasure and pride as we are about to start the third plenary session of today's event. As you know, this conference has been graced by a galaxy of eminent academicians and scholars across the country. So, in this vein, with great enthusiasm and anticipation, I hereby commence the proceedings of the session by inviting Chair of the session, Professor Panchanan Mohanty. Professor Panchanan Mohanty had remained Professor of Applied Linguistics at University of Hyderabad. He is presently working as Professor and Head of the Department of English in Institute of Applied Sciences and Humanities, GLA University, Muthra. He has several publications to his credit, and he is the active member of learned bodies like life member of the Linguistic Society of India. Ladies and gentlemen, okay, ladies and gentlemen, we will be having 2 online sessions. Kindly cooperate with me as I introduce the first speaker of the session, Dr. Syed Sarwar Hussain. Dr. Hussain is currently teaching English at the College of Language and Translation, King Saud University, Riyadh. Dr. Hussain has been a faculty member in the Department of English, Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi. Dr. Hussain has published several books which include Ideology and the Poetry of Stephen Spender, Ashes in the Fire, and many more. Dear audience, I take the distinct privilege of welcoming yet another remarkable speaker of the session, Professor Nilufar Khorcheva. Professor Nilufar Khorcheva is Professor and Head of Department of Translation Studies and International Journalism, Tashkent State University of Oriental Studies, Uzbekistan. Professor Nilufar Khorcheva has authored books like Theory of Translation, Premchand in Uzbek Translation, and Uzbek Hindi Phraseological Dictionary. She is the first researcher who worked on contrastive linguistics and translation studies of Hindi into Uzbek language. She has received Vishnu Hindi Saman Award in 2023. Now I humbly request the chair to start the proceedings. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the 5th plenary lecture in this conference. And for this session, the speaker is Dr. Syed Sarwar Hussain from King Saud University, Riyadh, and we'll be talking about issues of translating literary text Urdu through English. Dr. Hussain, may I request you to make your presentation, please? Can you hear me, Dr. Hussain?
Oh, yes. Assalamu alaikum. I'm here.
Yeah.
Should I start?
Yeah.
How much time do you give me?
So you have half an hour to speak, and it
Good.
should be over by 3:45 Indian Standard Time.
Thank you. Thank you. I am very thankful to the National Translation Mission, Central Institute of Indian Languages, and to Maulana Azad National University, National Urdu University, Hyderabad, to have invited me to address this extraordinarily important conference on literature, language, and translation. Now, this is the 75th year of India's independence, and we are celebrating Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. And this is the most opportune time to hold such a conference, and I look forward to its importance with anticipation, curiosity, and keen interest as I join you to engage in talking about literature and translation. Issues in translating literary text, Urdu through English, is my topic. Now, Urdu is spoken by almost 90 million people worldwide as the most vibrant language with its vibrant culture, a very rich culture. It's a language with a unique grammatical structure. And English, a West Germanic language that stemmed from Anglo-Saxon migrants, languages which Anglo-Saxon migrants carried to Britain in the mid-5th to 17th century. Therefore, translating from Urdu to English requires a deep understanding of the nuances, idiomatic expressions, and cultural references present in both languages. And the translator is faced with basically many challenges. Therefore, it becomes a very interesting task. At the same time, I will start with what appeared in Hamlet. One example in Shakespeare's Hamlet, when sometime after Polonius is killed, Hamlet's uncle Claudius asks him where Polonius was. And Hamlet replies, at supper. Not where he eats, but where he is eaten. Now, this is a problem of translation. How do you shift words? So, therefore, with culture comes the language, its idiomatic expressions, localizations, and all those challenges where the translator has to choose what could provide the intended meaning, or how he could adapt the culture of one language to the culture of the other language. And again, there is a morphosyntactical structure. This morphosyntactic structure is particular grammatical characteristic of a language. Now, how that shift takes place and how it determines the particular syntactic relationship in which the word form may participate within a sentence. These are important aspects when we are translating from Urdu to English. There are certain examples where we need to look into the words and see how the meaning crisscrosses. For example, हजारों ख्वाहिशें ऐसी कि हर ख्वाहिश पे दम निकले और बहुत निकले मेरे अरमान लेकिन फिर भी कम निकले. Now, the meaning of nikle is very different in both these two lines, contexts. The first is nikle refers to a conditional situation, and the second to a declarative past. So, therefore, the issue that the translation is faced, language, wordplay, all these are elements of the culture which a language carries with itself. So, therefore, at the moment of translation, there is a choice with the translator to how to make language, or his translational language, transparent and faithful at the same time. These are certain basic features. To overcome these challenges, professional translators from Urdu into English don't only require language proficiency, but they have to have a deep cultural understanding of the subject matter. They have to have an expertise and the ability to adapt and convey the intended meaning effectively in the target language. Because the South Asian culture of Urdu language is far removed from the European cultural context. So it's often not very easy to translate expressions particular to Urdu culture into English. The concepts and references need to be adapted or explained meaningfully for English readers. Again, as Ginter says, that these cultural elements, they underpin all translation methods. Therefore, the translator, who is the first leader, creates culturally distinctive interpretations. A cultural equivalent. Or as Newman says, an approximate translation where a source language culture word is translated by a target language cultural word. Dada, nana, bhabi, aap, tum, tu. These are examples. So this is what we call a translation process, and this is what creates a hybrid text. Now, culture is so very important that it influences the social sense of individual, and it carries with itself three elements like knowledge, proficiency, and perception. Knowledge of both the cultures, the culture of the source language and culture of the target language. Proficiency. Proficiency not only of the language, but adaptability to the culture. It's not only important for the translator to know the language, it's important for him to assimilate his own self to the cultures so that he can crisscross through cultures. And this is what will shape his perception. Then there is an onerous responsibility on the translator to create meanings, not meanings that he is satisfied with, but meanings that the readers can understand. It's a kind of a creative, not only an intellectual process, but a creative process where a translator has to work like a creator. For example, for specific Urdu cultural expressions like balon par chura chalana, it can mean hair shaving or trimming in face or head. Bal bachna, a narrow escape. And one very interesting example of an Urdu couplet, ख्याले यार में नींदों का तसव्वुर कैसा, ख्याले यार में नींदों का तसव्वुर कैसा, आंख लगती नहीं आंख लगी है जब से. Now the cultural specificity of आंख लगना or आंख लगाना, they have to be understood in the target language sense, in such a way that the efficacy or the importance of the cultural word is not lost in translation, but shines through it. मीर तकी मीर सिरहाने मीर के आहिस्ता बोलो अभी टुक रोते रोते सो गया है. The element of tuk in Urdu, to see its cultural importance and its specificity. This is an important element of translation, which every translation has to deal with. For example, Haath Kangan Kwarsi Kya. So here we can just plainly translate this in like the proof of the pudding is in the eating, or as plain as a pikestaff. But then again, some words like Shab-e Barat, Eid and Ramadan and Muharram are known to non-Urdu readers also. But Shab-e Barat and cultural terms like that, I believe that they have to be explained through translation under inverted commas, under commas or brackets. Night of salvation or forgiveness, to give the taste of that culture in the target language, which is very, very important. There are many examples I have given. I will gloss over them. Now, what is the objective of such a translation? It is to reduce the gap between the two cultures. Because what is translation in essence is not only transferring or negotiating between two languages, but to make yourself, your language, your culture understandable, acceptable to a larger audience, so as to share experiences, share beliefs, thoughts, and to live a shared life peacefully and with understanding. At the same time, it's very important to maintain the textual originality. So therefore, a translator has the role of a cultural bridge, where he brings two languages together. The idea of transportation of culture, language, transporting language, not translating, but transporting, came around 1340, and the translation critic Monday explains how this is important and plays an important role between the original text and the target text. Then translation, other than translation, what should be the quality of a translator? Urdu translator. Three things to my mind: originality, artistic skills, and competence. There are two factors: input and output. What I believe is that a translator from one language to the other, here preferably from Urdu to English, should not only read the source language or the translation literature that he has, whether it is prose or whether it is poetry, but he should also listen to what he is reading. He should also keep his ears very sharp as to what message the source text is conveying. That's his input. To hear the voices between the lines, to hear the voice which is very much there in the text. These are important factors. And then again, he has to select, choose, and writing and speaking. He should write. So therefore, originality, he should understand, he should listen to the voices inside the text. The artistic skill, to be creative enough to not to only follow with servility what is there literally in one language and translate it into other language, but should have the competence and the language ability to take the freedom that the translation text demands. I will give you example from one of my translations of a novel, Amavas Mekhab by Husainul Haq. the last page, the ending of the novel, where the hero and the heroine are together, separating themselves from the crowd. Hero is Kedar and Roshni is the heroine. Kedar ने सुई की नोक पर रुके लम्हे के सवे हिस्से में रोशनी को देखा. रोशनी कहीं नहीं थी, यह हर जगह थी. केदार कहीं नहीं था, यह हर जगह था. अंतर्घट तक अनंत बज रहा था. दो बदन भी जल रहे थे और भीग भी रहे थे. कहीं से कोई फाख्ता अपने होठों में जैतून की एक नन्ही सी शाख लेकर आई और उन पर निशावर किया. किसी मोर ने अपने रंग बरंगे पर उन पर वारे. कोई ठंडी हवा उन्हें छू कर गुजरी. तरल तरल बहती नदी ने आगे बढ़ते हुए उनकी तरफ जरा सा पलट कर देखा और खुशी में मस्त होकर दो लहरें एक दूसरे से अटखेलियां करने लगीं और केदार ने अपने दोनों बाजू रोशनी के गले में हिमायल करते हुए भारी आवाज में कहा. Now, this I have taken a certain liberty, but the nuances and the tone and the tenor, I have, with all my efforts, I don't know, readers can tell, tried to keep it. Kedar looked at Roshni for a fraction of the moment. He saw her everywhere and not fixed at a place. He also found himself everywhere with her and not frozen to a place. They were lost in eternity. Two bodies burning, but also drenched and soaked. A dove from nowhere came flying with a twig of olive in its beak and showered it on them. A certain peacock made an offering of its multicolored feathers on them. A cool, soothing breeze passed by, touching them. The singing, dancing river glanced back at them as it wound its way ahead, and intoxicated with pleasure, two playful waves started to gambol with each other. So, this was to show how a translator can take liberties and try to maintain the tone and tenor of the target language. Then the issue is that every literature has its own lexicon. So what should a translator see here? He should look for accuracy. What word, what syntactical structure could display that accuracy, what the source language is aiming at, maintenance of relevance, and then again not adding up from outside somewhere, but writing what is relevant to the theme, to the tone of the source language, and never be wary of the context. But then again, what happens is there are woes of wordplay. And with this wordplay, like double entendre and simple pun, fabrication, spoonerism, these are, word plays where you are lost. And then a translation takes, for example, Iqbal's poem on Shakespeare, where he plays with the word aina. शफक़ सुबह को दरिया का खराम आईना, नग़्मा शाम को खामोशी शाम आईना. Everything mirrors everything. बरग गुल आईना, आरिज़े ज़ेबाए बहार, शाहिदे मैं के लिए हुजले जाम आईना. हुस्न आईना हक और दिल आईना हुस्न, दिल इंसान को तेरा हुस्न कलाम आईना. है तेरे फिक्र फलक रस से कमाले हस्ती, क्या तेरी फितरत रोशन थी माले हस्ती. तुझको जब दीदार तलब ने ढूंढा, ताबे खुर्शीद में खुर्शीद को पिन्हा देखा. चश्मे आलम से तो हस्ती रही मस्तूर तेरी, और आलम को तेरी आंख ने उरिया देखा. और हिफ्ज़ इसरार का फितरत को है सौदा ऐसा, राज़दां फिर न करेगी कोई पैदा ऐसा, on Shakespeare. No, I translated it to keep the alliterative rhymes together. शुफ़क़ सुबह को दरिया का खरांडा हमारे शाम को खामोशी शाम आईना. So,
You will have to now sum up.
yeah,
Please
I'm
sum
going
up.
to do that.
Yeah.
I'm going to do that. So therefore, the roving rhymes and all those alliterations and all those have to be taken care of, and the metaphors. You should not have the monstrosity of the metaphors. Should be accurate to what kind of metaphor is there. So the design should be the technique, the linguistic approach, the style, the artistic choice. This is all that a translator has to make. Source language mastery, creativity, sensitivity, and receptive air, and intuitiveness, and linguistic awareness of the linguistic difference. These are the basic qualities that a translator should have, should be a mediator, and he should be very aware of the target and the source text culture. And thank you very much. And other things are there which are significant for ending. So my paper suggests that both the translator and the translated work has to have, there are certain issues which have to be resolved before we attempt at translating anything. Thank you very much.
Okay.
If you have any questions.
Yeah. Now we'll go to the second plenary speaker, and after that we will take questions, and we'll do that. That's what we have been doing. Let's follow the same practice here. Can I request Dr. Nilufar Khodieva to make her presentation? Are you there? Yeah, you are there. And the title of her presentation is Lexical Borrowings as a Problem of False Friends of Translator. Yes, ma'am, now the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and very good afternoon. First of all, I want to thank the translation mission and Dr. Tariq Khan to invite me to participate in this big event, and all the Department of English, Department of Translation Studies, MANUU, and especially I want to thank Professor Mohanty. If you remember, in 2016, as a researcher, I have came to your center in Central University of Hyderabad. So it was my early research work started, and I worked in Hyderabad Central University Library, MANUU University Library, then EFU Library to complete my research, my PhD. And that time it was very first time to meet Professor Mohanty, and I'm very happy to see you again, sir. And if you're going, my presentation is seen, right? Oh, okay. So yeah. Lexical borrowings as a problem of false friends of translator. Why we are choosing this kind of topic? Because Hindi, Urdu, and Uzbek languages, we have very close and similar lexicology. Then we have a very close cultural relations, so that now if you can see I have put the some words here, like false friends between Indian languages, false friends between Hindi, Urdu, and Uzbek, false friends in phraseology, false friends in periodical lexicology, false friends on cultural understanding of words, method of concretization and generalization. And these problems mostly we face one, we do translation from Urdu, Hindi, and Turkish language into Uzbek, because we have a very similar cultural relations and similar lexicology. For example, when I say false friends between Indian languages, like the word dada, as all of us, we know that dada means the grandfather, but in Indian languages there is a Bengali where it goes like brother, and in Uzbek also we have a dada, and it's same with Hindi and Urdu. It's grandfather, but in some regions dada called to father also. We do addressing to father also as a dada. So these kind of false friends between Indian language, once it goes to uh, literature translation, once it goes no in mostly I go for Premchand's novels, because the most translated novels of Indian fiction, it's Premchand into Uzbek. So in Premchand, we can see different regions, different states, different characters of India, and mostly from Bengal, people from Bengal, their life, it's described there. And if the translator doesn't know the regional lexicology of the India, mostly if we go for the specific writer, so it can be like it can differ and it can be mistaken. So that's why I started from false friends of between Indian languages. The second one is false friends between Hindi, Urdu, and Uzbek. And I have given these two examples, taklif, itibar. As we know, the borrowed words mostly, if you go to Arabic, from Arabic into, as per my analyzing, borrowed words from Arabic into Hindi and Urdu, it goes through Persian, and into Uzbek it goes directly. So when the words borrowings coming through another language, it can be taken only some specific meaning. So in Uzbek, taklif means inviting, and in Hindi it goes to difficulty. So this kind of false friends of translator also creates some specific problems, as uh, not always we go like sometimes it's said that if you know word you should go you should look to dictionary twice, so that you will not be mistaken, because we sometimes it sounds similar, but in the meaning there is a difference. So third point is false friends in phraseology. Like we know the idiom Nani Marjana, and Nani Marjana it sounds like uh, death of grandmother, but in the as an idiom, but and it comes like you cannot, if you don't know this idiom, you can just go for translation as grandmother dead, like. So once you got the meaning of why it becomes like this, and you go for you will not understand how to translate, and in this way like some idioms looks like a sentence, not idiom. So in that case, the translator also goes for this kind of mistakes. And fourth point on false friends in periodical lexicology, like begum. We have also the begum, and early history we use this addressing begum to women. And nowadays, this addressing used in Uzbek culture in Uzbekistan for men, for husband. Polite way to call husband, it's begum in Uzbek culture now. So these kind of false friends of interpreter also can make this kind of problem and create it. The last point on false friends, I mentioned cultural understanding of words, methods of concretization and generalization. Because as I mentioned earlier, we had a lot of words very similar and in the sense of word and understanding. And I have given the example, noun. As you can see in the picture, naan, and in Uzbek it's called non. And in general, it's a bread. In general, it's a bread. But in Indian culture, it's one type of bread of Mulai cuisine, like let's say. And non is for general understanding of roti. In Hindi, we can call roti, and for all kind of breads. And in Uzbek, naan, it's for all type of breads. We use word naan. So it is goes the meaning concretization in Hindi, because not one kind of bread of in Mulai cuisine, and naan in Uzbek culture. It's all type of naan breads. So these kind of differences on understanding methodology. And there was another example of topi. Uh, Topi, as we know, in Indian culture, we call head, cap, topi, all kind of clothing for head. We use topi. But in Uzbek culture, we have this national doppe, which is only dressed up in religious some events, in cultural events, and it is recognized by Uzbek head and it is differs in this meaning also. Like topi in Hindi, it goes for generalization of meaning, and in Uzbek language it goes to concretization of meaning. And this kind of lexical problem of interpreter, of course, we can say that it's not that much big problem for translator, but translator mostly they happen with translator when he does translate, or the one does the translation in this way, because as you know, in Uzbekistan, in our university, we prepare interpreters of all Oriental languages. And once we start with the young translators, interpreters to start the work, mostly they have and they do this kind of problems in written translation. And not only young translators, but very famous translators also, we can see this kind of misunderstandings on the meaning, on the stylistic, etc. So that with this we can see that we should add one more language, Turkish, to this. And these languages, Hindi, Urdu, Uzbek, and Turkish. It looks like even in Turkish we are having the same family, language family, and we have a lot of false friends of interpreter. One can say that for that, interpreter or translator should know very well all words. Only the clue of to do good translation this, but anyway, years goes, but sometimes even a very professional interpreter also goes for these kind of misunderstandings. And for now, it's that's all on my speech. Thank you very much for your attention once more. Thank you. If any question, please.
Sorry, Professor Hussain, had I known that her talk will be a little limited, I would have given you more time. So, anyway, it's okay. Both the talks you have heard, they deal with two different topics. Professor Hussain was talking about issues in translating a literary text, Urdu through English. And he discussed a lot of problems. And, whenever you talk about literature, as Roman Jakobson has mentioned in his classic paper, Closing Statement, Linguistics and Poetics, published in 1960, it's always from the axis of selection to the axis of combination. Whenever you talk about translation, what goes with what? That's very important. So, and I know that is quite important. When you talk localization, he was talking about literal versus idiomatic expressions. Look, idiomatic expressions are mostly culture specific. And of course, when you translate a piece of literature, there are expressions. And we do use idiomatic expressions in our day-to-day language also. When you say "tumhara patta kat jayega" or "mera dimag kha raha hai," etc. These are all idiomatic expressions. These are not. Or even my pet example is a quick fix is whatever is written on that packet of quick fix. Quick fix joins everything except broken hearts. There cannot be anything more poetic, more literary than this. So this kind of thing. So when you make a distinction between literary versus non-literary expression, there is a gray area, always a gray area, and that's quite important. And whenever there are people, I have heard people saying that in literature, the grammatical rules of the normal, ordinary language are broken. No, they are never broken. Never broken, I'm emphasizing. They are extended. You extend. If you want, I can give an example. And of course, Dylan Thomas, one of my very favorite poets, a grief ago. He could have said, a month, or normally we would say a month ago, a year ago, a minute ago, a grief ago. So grief, the poet is trying to measure time through grief, and it's not fixed like a month, 30 days, a week, 7 days. A grief, it may be 2 months, it may be 1 day, it may be 1 year. So a grief ago. But you cannot say a table ago. You cannot say, let's say, I can say a conference ago. If somebody asks me, have you seen Professor Imtiaz Hassanein recently? I say, yes, I saw him a conference ago. I can say that. So conference means whether it's a 2-day conference, 3-day conference, that's a different story. Or here it's, let's say, conference plus, whatever you have workshop, say 6-day kind of conference come workshop. But you see, it's an extension. A grief ago or a conference ago. Earlier, I used to say, now I don't smoke, but I used to say, somebody asked me, have you seen this professor? Yeah, I saw him a cigarette ago. The time I have taken to smoke a cigarette. So that kind of thing. And if I'm in a hurry, I'll do it in, let's say, a few seconds, 30, 40, 50 seconds. If I'm in a relaxed mood, I'll do it slowly. So I'll take 3-4 minutes. So it depends. So that kind of thing. So idiomatic expressions are there, but we can always
try to find equivalents in the target language. And when we don't find equivalents, now the question comes what to do. Suppose there are certain expressions in the source language or the source text which are not available in the target language. This is where people talk about untranslatability. I'm sorry. Look, if you ask me, probably if there is an occasion we can discuss. When you are doing something translation, I think untranslatability is not an important topic. It's more a philosophical topic which Quine discussed, quite a long time ago. And somehow we got acquainted with it and we started extending it to the translation studies. Untranslatability is more a philosophical concept than a concept in translation. That's what I feel. I have, whenever we discuss, I've discussed with many friends of mine. You give me an expression, I'll tell you how to, translate that. There are ways how to do it. I don't say that put a footnote, give a glossary. I don't say that. You can do that, but once you put it in the footnote or a glossary means I'll have to, go there and read, and in the meantime I'll forget what I was reading. Or footnote, I'll have to see what's below. There are other techniques, other ways of doing that. So that's what we will do. Localization, when you talk about, well, this is an issue which is very important because, as all of you know, Lawrence Venuti has talked about domestication and foreignization. When you are talking about localization, you are discussing nothing but domestication. Here, well, why should you domesticate? What's the reason? I'll give you an example. Let's say when you read, let's say my favorite poet again from the English literature, let's say the Wasteland. When you read, don't you make an effort to understand? Don't you try to understand what kind of cultural background and what kind of all these things? We try to do that. And when it comes to translation, why do you want to domesticate? That's the question I would like to ask. Because translation also gives you an opportunity to get exposed to another culture. That's very important. Because we are in Indian culture. When I'm reading something, let's say written in Russian, Spanish, or Italian, or whatever it is, or Japanese, or even Eskimo, whatever, we are getting exposed to that culture. That is very important. That is the contribution of translation. Now, why should you domesticate? Now, if you use translation also gives an opportunity to enrich the target language. There are many things in the source language which may not have an equivalent in the target language. So you can do what's called calking. You literally translate that. If you literally, suppose peace courier becomes Shanti Dut, or something like that, so you just literally translate that, and maybe it will be accepted by people because you are getting a new expression, new understanding. That's how a language is enriched. Now, why should you always try to domesticate? When Othello becomes Onkara, I don't think there is anything exciting. So, it's a film, but suppose somebody does that, and maybe that is where we talk about transcreation. So transcreation is not translation. So we'll discuss that probably when I make my presentation. I will make a presentation what translation means, because translation is not a word, it's a term. I'm sure nobody will say this is my definition of metaphor. Nobody will say that. Metaphor is a definition. So translation also should have a definition. We cannot say that, in MANUU, this is the definition of translation. Or University of Hyderabad, this is the definition of translation. Or University of Delhi, this is the definition of translation. No, that cannot happen. Translation, if it is used as a term, it should be monosemantic in nature. It should have only one definition, not many definitions. That's the differentiation. That's the difference between a word and a term. And we are using translation as a term, not as a word. If it is a word, you can use it in any sense. That's not an issue. Use par nazar rakho, nazar leke rakho kuch. No, not at all. उस पर किताब रखो, it's okay. Put a book. Nazar रखो, you are not putting that. It's a different kind of nazar. His nazar is not a term. It's a word. So words will have extended meanings, no terms. No, now we'll have to decide what we'll do. This presentation I'll make later. So when you talk about untranslatability, this is something which has to be taken care. Yeah, they were giving all sorts of difficult examples. I'll give you a simple example. In this room, can anybody translate, let's say, uncle? Can anybody in this room translate uncle? I'm asking. So that's what. So we don't understand, because when I was translating an Assamese novel, Lumirda is Prithivir Ahahi, if there is an Assamese speaker, I'm sure you have read that. Once the translation was done, I did it and sent it to National Book Trust, NBT, and then they sent me a pre-forward by somebody written in English, and it had the word uncle. I didn't know what to do. Should I make it Chacha, Tau, Fufa, Mama? What should I do with it, that? So I was then I wrote to them, can you please send me the Assamese text? They took 5 months to send me the Assamese text. I was delighted. Finally, they sent me the Assamese text. I hope it was not translated from English to Assamese and sent it to me. I didn't ask whether they did that. Then once they get it, it became easy for me. It was Mamu, Mama. Now, so when you talk about translation, it is untranslatability is something which is not at all important, should not be important. I don't say it is meaningless. No, not at all. It is there, but we must find a way how to, get rid of it, because a translator is also a decision maker. Translator also decides what, they should do. So that is, there. So when you talk about cultural words or cultural nuances, here the translator has to decide. There's no doubt about it. And I strongly believe, and you may not agree, that's a different issue. When you translate, we must not try to domesticate the text. If you are domesticating the text, it is not a piece of translation, because whatever the source text author has said, let's try to keep it like that. Try to keep it like that. If it is absolutely difficult to understand, that's a different story. And there are not many such examples. There are many such examples. We can find a way to express something. Whatever language you give, there is a way to find, an equivalent. It may be a little longer phrase or something, but it's possible to do that. So that is something which we must keep in mind. And so that's why when you talk about reducing the gap between the cultures, this is debatable. Why should you do that? Because I know when I read the Westland, I know I'm reading a text written in another language, which represents another culture. It's not my culture. So when Eliot says April is the cruelest month, it's not acceptable to me. Because April is the spring, Vasant Rutu here, it's not the cruelest month. He says cruelest month for some other reason. And he should have said rainy season is the cruelest month. That's understandable. If he says that we have Meghadutam, today morning it was also discussed, in which, if you are familiar with Kalidas's text, Meghadutam, you can see what it expresses. So cultural differences are there. But let's try to, and one more thing which is very important. Nowadays, earlier translations were mostly because of love. I read a text. I want that my, language speakers should read that text I used to translate. I don't know, you please correct me if I am wrong. Most of the translations today are commissioned. NBT says you translate, I translate. Sahitya Academy says you translate, I translate. How many of us translate because of love? I'm reading a text, let's say, in any language, let's say, Urdu or English or Japanese. And, I want that my Odia readers should read that. So I translate because of that. No, I don't. Most of us don't do that. No, I don't. I'm not saying that nobody does that. I'm sorry. Please don't misunderstand me. But most of us, when I'm asked by the National Book Trust, I do. When I'm asked by the Sahitya Academy, we do. And let me tell you, whenever I was asked to translate a text, when everybody rejects or doesn't want to translate, I'm given to translate. That's what has happened in my case. Because nobody would like to translate from Assamese, from Kannada kind of thing, or Telugu, so I'm given such text, which I will try. I try to read in the original and see what can be done. Yes, and now, of course, there is something which is very crucial, very important, which we have not discussed so far. A bilingual person cannot translate. It was discussed. One must be bicultural. And what is more important is that we talk about translation from, let's say, mother tongue to other tongue. I'm using little literary kind of expression, when ideally it should be the reverse. Because we know English, but whenever we give a text to an English man or woman, you will see that that person will find a lot of problems in our English. And I'm sure even our front-ranking writers like Raja Rao, Khuswant Singh, and all these people, they have been criticized for, when they were reviewed by the native speakers of English in journals published abroad, they said that let them first learn English, then write in English. They have said that. There are some reviews which I have. I don't have it right now, but I can give you the references. Now, see that, this is something which is very important. When we translate, it should ideally be from the other tongue to the mother tongue, not vice versa, because our competence is in the mother tongue, not in the other tongue. So it is much better if we translate from another language to our mother tongue. And when we do the reverse, I don't say that, but I have never done it. It's, in principle, so nothing else. I don't translate from Odia to other languages. It's always, whatever 4 or 5 books I have translated, they are always from another language to Odia. It's not, let me tell you, it's not always commissioned. I have 2 or 3 books I have translated because of love and not commissioned also. Now, these are something issues we should discuss, quite important. And if you look at the translations from English into other languages and other languages into English, you will see that most of the times it is from English to other languages, because English speakers don't translate from other languages. They don't, because they think they are quite rich in everything. And because they have means to print dollars or pounds, they have army, and so they are quite powerful. So they needn't translate, kind of from other languages to English. It's the reverse. And Lawrence Venuti has given all sorts of data about that. So shows how the politics of translation. That's a different kind of story. And another issue, I think I should mention, Professor Imtiaz Hasnain in the morning mentioned about NEP and emphasis on Indian languages. I know for sure a lot of texts are now being translated in the field of, let's say, engineering. I know for sure engineering texts are being translated by some professors who teach those engineering disciplines. My question is, have they been trained in translation? Even for a week? They know only 2 languages and translate. Can you do that? Should you do that? That's a very important question. Because how to take a decision when there is a problem or you face a problem? How do you take a decision unless you have some training in translation? That's a must. Because I know Professor Hassan is not there, but will you appoint a cook who has not got some training? Will you appoint a mason who has not gone to an ITI? Or a carpenter who has no diploma from an ITI or a polytechnic? You won't. But for translation, you don't require any training. This is something which is certainly not acceptable. And, there are qualifications of a translator. It has been discussed by greatest writers, translators. So who should translate? So these are the issues probably we have to discuss in such conferences, because anybody and everybody today morning it was mentioned, no doubt, but everybody cannot translate. And suppose I have conducted this experiment many times. I give a small text. I have given one sentence to my students to translate. There are 10 students, there are 10 kinds of translation. Now the question is, which one is more appropriate, the most appropriate? How do you decide? There must be a way, unless you know the theory, that okay, or theoretical, or for something, some reason, some logic you will have to give as to why one translation is better than others, or which one of them is the best one, most appropriate one. I don't say best one doesn't mean that it's the only one. No, most appropriate one. So this kind of thing is absolutely necessary. Coming back to the second presentation, Dr. Nilufar Khodiewar presentation on false friends. False friends is a very interesting concept. Very interesting. It is mostly discussed in language teaching. When you say something and it's understood as something else. I have forgotten that example. Exactly, it's a tip of the tongue phenomenon. It's tip of the tongue, but I don't remember it. A Spanish person had some health issues and he was admitted in a hospital in the United States. And because he was a Spanish speaker, there was a Spanish-English bilingual who came and translated that, rather interpreted that, in this presence of a doctor who was a native speaker of English. He didn't know Spanish at all, because if you, I can tell you the joke I have heard from my American friends. If you speak 3 languages, you are a multilingual. In the United States, if you speak 2 languages, you are bilingual. If you speak 1 language, you are American. So, that is the joke. So, he was an American doctor, so he knew English very well. And this man translated it in a little different way. It was a false friend. I'm not able to recollect that exact word. I hope I'll remember it during tea time. And, for that hospital had to give $65 million to the patient. You can imagine, I wish I were there, not that patient, kind of thing. And just one word was translated wrongly, for which, the hospital had to, he went to court, of course, and $65 million he got. So false friends, so be careful. And false friends it's a very important topic in language teaching, because when you speak, we teach how to learn another language, we give such things. So there are many other issues. Is there a Bengali speaker here, Odia speaker here? Okay, all right. Now, if you, once you say that, अनुवाद अध्ययन में मेरी कोई आग्रह नहीं है. How do you understand Hindi speakers? I'm sure you will think that I'm speaking something which is meaningless, isn't it? Yes or no? But the Bengali speakers, Odia speakers find it perfectly all right, because for them, agraha is interest. But here, agraha means earnest request. मैं प्रोफेसर हसन से आग्रह करता हूं कि वो 2 शब्द बोले, something like that. But see how one changes. And if there is a Telugu speaker here, I'm sure there are Telugu speakers. For them, agraha means entirely different. It's anger. See how a word changes, from time to time. There is absolutely no work on this, how a word changes its meaning, and one can even draw an atlas and can do that. That kind of study we have not done so far. So the Indian languages are concerned. So these are some of the issues. When this is a false friend, again, if I say that, "Arey nahi, isme koi mera agrah nahi hai." Suppose being an Odia, I can say that. So, if I say that, all of you say, "Arey, does he know Hindi or not?" Then, of course, I do sometimes deliberately and say that, "Look, I'm a non-Hindi speaker, so I make mistakes. Please don't take me seriously." I do that knowingly, deliberately. It's a play of words kind of thing. Okay. Now, when you talk about false friends, of course, these are some of the issues which are quite important. And Dr. Nilufar, it's always better because we are talking about, it's a conference and translation of literature and culture. it's always better to give examples from literary text to show that and how it happens. You have given good, your examples are good, no question about that. But had it been textual, it would have been very important. What happens when one translates? All these things do happen when one translates. So these things, I'll give you an example. Another text I was translating, it was Madhya Vit. It should have been a Madhya Vit kind of family, parivar, middle class. But the person did it middle edges or vice versa. I don't remember correctly. Either Madhya Yugin ko Madhya Vit kiya, nahi to Madhya Vit ko Madhya Yugin kiya. So that's also happened. So Madhya, something like that. So all these things are very crucial, and these are some of the comments that I would like to make. So probably, yeah, it's going to be, yeah, some 2-3 minutes for 4:30. So thank you for, then I got reminded that in plenary lectures, you are not supposed to ask questions and comments. So with this, thank you very, very much for your patient hearing. And if you have any questions or comments, I cannot say that during tea time, whatever was told by my predecessors, I cannot say that. But you can send the questions and comments to them through the organizers. Thank you for this opportunity, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Professor Said Sarwar Hussain sir and Professor Neelufar ma'am for contributing to this conference. Thank you, Professor Panchanan Mohanty sir, for sharing the session. Your comments have certainly added more light to the conference. Now we will be having a tea break of 10 minutes. I hope you will enjoy. Thank you.
I'm sorry, no tea for you.